Good evening and welcome to Verdict 2014 on Rajya Sabha TV. I'm Ishan Russell. And it's been a bad day for Jammu and Kashmir with a spate of militant attacks against security forces in the valley ahead of polling a few days away. That will be a special focus tonight on Verdict, but let's take a look at the top stories we're tracking right now. Suspected Pak militants carry out 4 attacks against the army in Jammu and Kashmir. High security alert ahead of the third phase of polls. Security experts and politicians express outrage. Home Minister Rajnath Singh and PDP patron Mufti Mohammad Saeed address rallies in Jammu and Kashmir, reject militant threat keeping people away from polls. Prime Minister Modi to campaign in the valley tomorrow. And Maoist leader of the outlawed People Liberation Front of India arrested in Jharkhand. Police claim the catch will lead to more arrests. Well, top story, high security alerts have been sounded in Kashmir after suspected Pakistani militants carried out a series of attacks today in 2 assembly segments headed to the polls in the coming week. Attacks on an army camp in Uri and on a search party near Srinagar sent out threatening signals. As authorities in India promise strong action and say the situation is under complete control, security analysts point out that Pakistan has a lot to answer for.
First, militants stormed an army camp at Mohara in Uri in the wee hours of Friday. Then, just hours later, gunmen opened fire on an army search party in Sora on the outskirts of Srinagar. At the army camp in Mohara in Uri, Indian Jawans killed all 6 militants in a fierce encounter after the raid. On the Indian side, 7 army men, including a senior officer, and 3 policemen lost their lives. The area has been sealed off after the encounter. All civilian movement stopped. Just hours later, militants struck again with an attack on a search party in Sora on the outskirts of Srinagar. An exchange of fire followed and a militant was shot dead. 2 hold-up militants, including a commander of the Lashkar-e-Taiba, were later shot dead. A large quantity of arms and ammunition have been recovered. More disturbing is the fact that both these areas are headed to polls in the 3rd and 4th phases next week. Uri votes on the 9th of December, Shora on the 14th. New Delhi called the attacks a sign of desperation by Pakistan and anti-national elements, assuring that security operations and the election process were on track.
Last few days, the army has been intercepting the terrorists and eliminating them. So I think it's a sign of increased interception by army.
बराबर जो आतंकवादी भारत की सरहदों को पार करके आते हैं और यहाँ तबाही पैदा करते हैं इसे हिंदुस्तान में, वही सब सारे आतंकवादी पाकिस्तान में ही घरों में छिपे हुए हैं, उनको छुपा कर रखा गया है। क्या इसकी जवाबदेही पाकिस्तान की नहीं बनती?
Security experts echo the view in the backdrop of the massive turnout in the first 2 phases of the 5-stage elections and the success of the democratic process in the state so far. A militant attack in Naugam sector on polling day on the 3rd of December had been foiled too.
Pakistan game plan was to strengthen Islamic setup in Jammu and Kashmir region. But what is happening now, the democracy is strengthening last few years especially, and the voting percentage has gone up to 72%, which is not, Pakistan is not willing to accept that.
Please take serious action, send a message, a strong message, whatever may come. I think this is the time. The message must go to Pakistan to stop all her activities.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi is to address an election rally in Srinagar on Saturday ahead of the 3rd phase of polling on the 9th of December. Security has been stepped up after the attacks. 16 assembly segments of Jammu and Kashmir go to polls in this phase. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
But the attacks didn't just stop there. Later in the day, suspected militants carried out 2 grenade attacks again in poll-bound areas in the Kashmir Valley. Close to 4 p.m., unidentified men lobbed a grenade at a security patrol at a crowded bus stand in Tral in Pulwama district. 1 person was killed and 6 people are reported injured in the incident. The attackers fled after the attack. No group has claimed responsibility so far. Earlier in the day, militants had hurled a grenade at a police station in Shopia in South Kashmir, which goes to the polls on the 14th of December. The Shopia area has been vulnerable as militants coming from Doda region through the Pir Panjal range have been using this area as a transit spot. And we have Major General G.D. Bakshi joining us. He's a security analyst. Thank you very much for coming in, sir. Just why now? I mean, the timing is obviously to deter people from going into poll. But given the high voter turnouts, do you think this could perhaps throw a spanner in the works?
You know, Pakistan has been rattled, absolutely rattled by the 72% turnout of voters that has taken place in Jammu and Kashmir. And they have shown that despite all the terrorist threats for boycotting the election, people have turned out in huge, huge numbers to give a rebuff to Pakistan. Now, Pakistan has found that very difficult to stomach. All her attempts to internationalize the Jammu and Kashmir issue have drawn a blank. Pakistan has been running to nowhere on a treadmill. You know, they have been trying to involve the whole world, but it has just not worked. The people are fed up of this Kashmir song of Pakistan. Now, the fact is, this, however, is a very marked escalation. It's a deliberate escalation. Pakistan has, tried to launch a spate of terrorist incidents in the last 12 hours. There have been 3 attacks. I think the time has now come to raise costs for Pakistan. I don't think we should take it lying down. We are very sure that we will have a very different response than the Chalta Hai attitude of the last UPA regime.
Right.
We would like to see some tough action to raise costs for Pakistan, to deter Pakistan from such escalation, unwarranted, uncalled for escalation leading to loss of life in India cannot be taken lying down.
Absolutely.
And I think the time has come to send a stern and a very firm message.
All right, I'll just stop you there because the same sentiment that you're echoing has been echoed by political parties who have reacted strongly to these attacks, many saying more needs to be done. So let's have a quick listen in and we'll come back to you, General Bakshi.
This is possibly an outcome of the manner in which the people of Jammu and Kashmir have overwhelmingly voted in the first 2 phases of the ongoing assembly elections over here, which has proved to the entire world that the people of Jammu and Kashmir are ready to answer the bullet with the power of ballot. And this is a message which has possibly not gone down well with the elements opposed to democracy in India and democracy in Jammu and Kashmir particularly.
It's time Prime Minister made a statement to the nation as also before the Parliament detailing a blueprint and a plan to protect our borders and to ensure that any such provocative incidents where our Jawans lose lives daily, where Pakistan pushes terrorists into Indian territory, more so into J&K, will not be tolerated.
हर बुलेट की कोशिश को जम्मू कश्मीर के लोग बैलेट और मजबूत बैलेट से जवाब दे रहे हैं और आने वाले दिनों में भी देंगे। इस तरह के हताश और निराश जो आतंकवादी ताकतें हैं उनको किसी भी तरह का इस तरह की हरकतों से, इस तरह की साजिशों से फायदा होने वाला नहीं।
और हम लोग फिर कह रहे हैं कि राजनीति छोड़ के हम देश के साथ हैं। जब देश की सुरक्षा के मसले पर प्रधानमंत्री कोई कठोर निर्णय लेंगे, समाजवादी पार्टी उस कठोर निर्णय के साथ करेगी।
गोली से गोली, गोली को गोली या बंदूक से बंदूक उत्तर देना ठीक है, लेकिन जब तक पाकिस्तान को हम उनकी भाषा में जवाब नहीं देते, तब तक इस प्रकार के एनकाउंटर और हमारे जवानों की शहादत होती रहेंगी।
नरेंद्र मोदी चुनाव में कम्युनलाइज करने के लिए हिंदू भाइयों को पाकिस्तान हिम्मत नहीं करेगा, आंख में आंख डाल के बात नहीं कर सकता है। लगातार गोला फेंक रहा है, लगातार हमारे सैनिकों के ऊपर, सिविलियंस के ऊपर गोले फेंक रहे हैं।
And internal security expert Major General G.D. Bakshi is live with us. General Bakshi, final question to you. As far as poll percentages go, 72% was a record turnout. The third phase is on the 9th. Do you see what has happened today in terms of security and these attacks dampening that number?
Well, it could scare people, though I think unless the attacks are repeated, the effect doesn't last more than 1 or 2 days. And I do think the people will still come out in large numbers. But the fact of the matter is that why should we take lying down such a deliberate escalatory process, such a deliberate in-your-face increase in the level of violence? Why should it go unpunished, unresponded? That is, I think the time has come for that. And the other aspect that I would like to reiterate is that there were the people, the leaders in the J&K Valley, as also in New Delhi, who have been crying blue murder that AFSPA should be removed, the army should be kicked out. I think they should now introspect. We have been warning the security experts, the intelligence agencies, that come the elections, Pakistan will try and step up the escalation. Pakistan will try and step up the terrorist violence. You know, and the American troops are withdrawing from Afghanistan. A lot of spare jihadis will be turned towards Jammu and Kashmir. This is the wrong time to lower your guard. This is the wrong time to weaken your defenses. And yet there was this chorus, unseemly chorus, take away the AFSPA, kick the army out. I mean, they are the biggest blot on the landscape. Today you are depending on them to save your life. You know, if they weren't there, you can imagine the level of loss that would have occurred in these areas. It's only because the army boys have fought, sacrificed. You can't take away their legal protection, their legal mandate, and ask them to operate in a legal vacuum. I mean, these are anti-national acts. Just for your own, the sake of winning an election, you cannot lower the guard and the defenses of the country.
All right, General Bakshi, we'll leave it at that. Obviously, the security concerns, I mean, as you pointed out, a lot of pressure on the government now to react as far as Pakistan is concerned vis-a-vis the security situation in Jammu and Kashmir. Thank you very much, General Bakshi, for sharing your perspective on this matter with us. Well, now moving on. Meanwhile, despite the heightened security tensions today, campaigning, though, carried on unaffected in Jammu and Kashmir. Senior party leaders within the state and from the centre are focusing on areas headed to the polls in the third phase on Tuesday. As scheduled, Home Minister Rajnath Singh addressed 3 public rallies in the areas headed to polls. He flew to Pargwal belt of Jammu from New Delhi this morning and addressed a rally there. He also travelled to Thana Mandi area and Dharhal belt of Rajouri district to address public gatherings to garner support for the BJP candidates in these constituencies. And PDP patron Mufti Muhammad Saeed addressed a rally in Pulwama that goes to the polls in the third phase on Tuesday. The area has seen heightened militant activity in the run-up to the polls, the latest being today's grenade attack at a crowded bus stop in the area. Saeed urged the people to come out and vote in large numbers, saying this was the best reply to the enemy's attacks. A delegation of the All-Party Sikh Coordination Committee has pledged support to the PDP. Well, shifting focus to Jharkhand now, where security forces claim a big breakthrough against Maoist elements looking to disrupt the ongoing elections in the state. Jharkhand police nabbed a leading member of the People's Liberation Front of India, a Maoist outfit that has called for a boycott of polls and threatened to disrupt the elections. The man was nabbed in Rania area of Kunti district. The group allegedly collects what it calls protection money from villagers in the region while coercing them to stay away from polling. Money as well as other evidence collected is expected to lead to further arrests. Well, that's a wrap on Verdict 2014. We'll be back every day at 7:30 with all the latest election news. Thanks so much for watching.